Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.
Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. Hutchison River Parkway is still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid bridges to Long Island, hopelessly jammed. All communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army is wiped out.
Hello, this is Malcolm Robinson and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Thank you for that, Malcolm. Well, welcome to another Paranormal Dimensions in these strange times we're living in. I hope everyone's out there staying safe, and what the hell's going on, we don't know, but there you go. Okay, we got another welcome return of another guest who's been on before, Solaris BlueRaven. And she blew my mind last time. I'm sure she'll blow my mind again. Solaris is a published author, public speaker, timeline astrologer, healer, remote viewer, clairvoyant and assessment specialist in psychotronic warfare, synthetic telepathy and covert technology. She's an internationally renowned psychic and cosmic advisor. Solaris has been a test pilot for covert technology and has a professional background in surveillance. In addition to her current research, she investigates global anomalies. Her expertise in artificial intelligence interface is well respected in the scientific and mystical community. Solaris has written several books over the years, and her latest book, Alien Intelligence, I think it's been out for a couple of months now. But hopefully we'll be speaking a bit about that tonight. Right, joining me today on the show is the lovely Sacha Christie, the well-known Sacha Christie. I think you're probably fine by now. Hello, Sacha. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for joining me, and you'll help me out a lot tonight with this co-presenting and everything.
Yeah, I've spoken to Solaris. I've been on her show. She's been on mine quite a few years ago. I have got her book. I've been rummaging through my bookcase. I can't see it. I was going to have a quick flick through and refresh my memory.
This is what she's.
No, actually, it was the first one. I have the remote, but I can't see it. I've got that many books and they're all stacked and squished in my bookcase. Like, any gap that there is has been filled with a book.
Yeah, because she's got a few now, hasn't she? I have the remote.
Probably,
1 million miles till midnight, and I have the remote Black Operations. Well, I think she's coming on tonight to talk about her new book, Alien Intelligence. So
right, that'll be interesting then. Yeah, I like Solaris.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, you have spoken to her before. I've been on her show as well, and she's quite a character. It's hard to keep up to her, and she's actually mind-blowing. She blows my mind, actually. But
yeah, she does a lot. Yeah.
Anyway, right, I'll go and we'll introduce her.
Let's get the lady on.
Yep. Hello, and welcome to the show, Solaris BlueRaven. Hello, Solaris.
Why, thank you.
Welcome to the show, and you've been on before, and welcome back to Paranormal Dimensions. I was on your show a little while ago, and I enjoyed that very much. The time went so quickly, but you're back on here now to talk about your new book, Impartial, and I imagine there'll be other things we'll be talking about. And joining me today, as you already know, is Sacha Christie. You already know Sacha.
Yeah,
spoken with
we
her before.
go
So
back a few years. Yeah.
Sasha's
Wonderful.
here to back me up because
Hi there, Sasha. It's wonderful to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's nice to
Great.
talk to you again. Actually, it's been too long. It must be nearly 10 years since we've
Oh
spoken.
my gosh, yeah, it has.
yeah, it should be an interesting talk. I mean, I can just sit back and you should wrap it on if you like. But
Well, just wind us up and watch us go.
anyway, Solaris, I suppose if you've got a new book out, haven't you, called Alien Intelligence?
I do.
I don't know if you want to start off telling us a bit about that, and then we can go into some other things. What is it, your fourth book now?
Oh gosh, no, this is like my 7th or 8th.
Oh, wow,
I've
sorry
lost
about that.
track of all the books
Okay,
I've written,
all right.
but yeah. This one's really interesting. It's alien intelligence, stepping up to the galactic neighborhood. I also touch on our galactic heritage, our cosmic heritage, but the psyops associated with contactees, military abductions, and some of the disinformation in the UFO community, which of course I'm sure both of you are very aware of. So it dovetails into a lot of different topics. I'm very happy with the way it came out, but the ultimate theme in it is literally about our cosmic heritage, which is us. We are the extraterrestrials we seek, and that's where the alien intelligence comes in, and that's how I approach it in the book itself. And that just went live like January.
Yeah, just beginning of this year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long was it? I know you were planning it for quite a while, weren't you? Because I know you said you were writing it at the end of last year.
I was.
So how long did it take you to write it?
Well, it took a little bit over, I think it was like a year and a half or so, because I kept taking breaks. I was busy. I started getting wrapped up doing other things outside of the perimeters of writing, and then I just couldn't finish it on time. I eventually did dive in and just wrap it up. But it is hard when you take a break and then you walk away and you have to recalibrate to what you were writing about. So,
yeah.
But I did finish it, and I was pretty pleased with the way it came out. Yeah, you know, Sasha.
Yeah. That's what I was saying a little while ago about needing a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the premise of the book?
Well, pretty much about our cosmic ancestry. I mean, when it dovetails into who we are as cosmic beings, our bloodline, our cosmic bloodline, but also the type of psychological operations that have been run for a very long time. When it comes down to the type of things that are going behind the scenery in the black sciences connected to people being pulled into military abductions and contacting experiences. I also touch on some of the anomalies that are almost misclassified to some degree about being extraterrestrial when in fact they're ours. So I touch on a lot of different topics connected to that, but it ultimately dives into the alien intelligence within and our bloodlines and what we are really doing here as cosmic beings, because in my opinion, in my own personal assessment, we are the driving force. We are the intelligence behind extraterrestrials. And if people want to call us whatever label you want to put on it, we are that species.
So do you think that the extraterrestrials are real, or do you think that all of it is like a psyop?
Well, I think a lot of it is real. I think we are obviously connected to divine forces, celestial forces, whatever you want to call them. But I know there's a lot of psychotronic programs that run that can interface people with artificial intelligence, that can create a delusional program that literally looks like an extraterrestrial, when in fact it's an artificial intelligence program with a psyop involved. In other words, it's the military covert induction program versus something that's really tangible as an extraterrestrial. That's my own research and my own personal experience decoding. Yeah. You know, that's how that rolls.
Pretty scary, really. So when you talk about military abductions, do you mean you're talking about human people being abducted by the military and
right?
Yeah.
Yes, people being experimented on. I'm sure Sasha knows very well. Especially if you have a specific ability of some kind, a natural gift, whether you're psychic, good at remote viewing, healing, whatever it is, or your contactee bloodline insofar as the way you're able to perceive multidimensional states of consciousness and how you're able to navigate, because that's real. That's a real multidimensional field. But what they're doing is extracting people who are involved in these projects or contacting experiences and then pulling them into different types of programs for experimentation, sometimes for other things. And with that comes screen memories programming and, of course, the psychotronics that I talk about, which is creating a delusion. And that can be very dangerous for a lot of people because they can get mislabeled into looking like they're mad when they're not, or schizophrenic or bipolar, when in fact they're actually being interfaced with a technological feed.
Yeah, it's difficult to understand how some of it goes on because I've had some crazy experiences and they have been, there's even a quantum physicist who's had an experience recently and he said that his experience was more real than reality, which is what it is, which makes me suspicious about the nature of it because it is so super real, like high definition. And people say, that we don't know the difference between dreaming and being awake. You know, we don't know when we're asleep, we don't know when we're awake. When you're in these situations, you know you're awake, you know, and you're just in that kind of like frozen sort of shock, and you don't act or react because you don't know what's going on. You just kind of freeze frame.
You can be the sacred witness, no doubt. And also, when you're lucid in the experience, you tend to remember more. I know I did. And that's what saved me on a lot of different levels. I was able to understand and communicate what was going on back in the day.
Yeah. I remember seeing something pretty horrific in one moment in time. And there were men who were wearing black. I'm not saying they were men in black, but they were wearing black and very black shiny shoes. And I saw quite a horrific scene in front of me. I won't describe it now. I will tell you in private. But I actually then, you know, obviously thinking that and hoping that it was a dream. And then seeing a painting on the internet of the very scene that I'd seen, but not had I ever seen it before. It was not something that was already an imprint in my mind. So I was like, well, that was horrific. Now I'm seeing it as a painting. And now I'm kind of thinking that it really, really happened, you know.
Wow.
So it's
no
a lot.
coincidences there.
It's a lot to process.
Right.
Because you question your sanity all the time, don't you? You know. And,
absolutely. Especially, well, after you've been where beings like us have been. Yeah. You have to be very
there's
rational and
nobody out
grounded.
there. There's no one out there who could question my sanity any more than I have. In fact, of all of the people who questioned my sanity put together, and then times it by 100 at least, you know, because you just can't process this kind of stuff, can you?
You have to shadow yourself. There's no doubt about it. And there's so many levels and layers to it. It's a tangled web, and especially if they've been doing any type of overlaying where they're doing a lot of programming with in between the spaces of your own brainwave function, and you'll find later on that certain things start to surface or appear as a possible memory when in fact it could be something that was inserted. So yeah, definitely use discernment. But I think, you know, a lot of people who are contactees don't do that, and they're not questioning. They're just assuming that it's coming from this or it's coming from that, and that's okay. But I would just forewarn them that that's not necessarily the case on a lot of different levels, especially now with our technology.
Yeah, because we're presented scenarios that are just impossible. So, you know, like people who have died are pets that have been dead for years, you know, and they're kind of, you're in this, it's almost, you know, like a setup to test your emotional response, but it's got to be some kind of program and, you know, interference in your mind, some kind of, like you say, insertion of a memory. I don't even know how it works, but a lot of us have had things that are played out that are just literally impossible. So you don't believe, you always question it because you just think, well, how could they be there when they've been dead for years, you know?
Right, but you do have your natural psychic antenna, and that's one thing I want to make sure people realize, that you do have the gifts, and you do get that imagery. If people or life forms of any kind transfer out and they choose to connect with you, there will be some interaction, or there'll be a presence or an image of some kind. So I don't discount the psychic vision itself. But what I have noticed is that the type of the technology that they use overlays and sometimes interrupts that natural frequency to a point where it's starting to skew, like a radio transmission. It'll just attune you to a different dimensional field of more digital communication and imagery, where it becomes more AI. And that's when we have to question what we're looking at. Insofar as, has it been hacked? Is this something that's been expanded upon through an artificial intelligence program, which is more than likely connected to the underground?
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't know where the hell they're going with all that.
Yeah, well, it's a deep well. It's Alice in Wonderland. You know, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
It reminds me all a bit about that Arnold Schwarzenegger film. What was it called? But yeah, where they implant.
Total Recall.
That's it.
Total Recall.
Yep, and that was Philip K. Dick, and he's spot on. He was spot on. Yep.
Yeah,
Brain hacking.
They must have been telling us something when they made that film. Obviously, that's the way things were going. Because at the time it was quite far fetched, wasn't it? But I could see what you're saying there. It's sort of very, very much.
Oh no! I recorded a show with somebody earlier today, and we were discussing how there's things in the films that are in these experiences, and he asked me what I thought about that, and I said, well, I think they know. You know, it's not. they can't be sitting on the internet reading like all this stuff from a housewife in Liverpool or Bradford and then including it in, or anybody in the world who's saying it, but for example, and including it in the movies. It's like it's in the movies because it's an actual thing.
Yeah.
So somebody knows, well, we know that they know, and how can they not know?
Yeah,
they're making money at it, and then they're, of course, at the expense and suffering of beings like us, too. There are on a lot of different levels. That's one thing that's very frustrating on that level. Taking people's lives away is not a problem when they're being inducted into covert experimentation. Then all of a sudden you find that you'll see something very, very similar in the theater, whether it's, movies or music or whatever. And even right now, mine is all DARPA. So everything that happened to me when I was testifying and communicating back in 2004 and then in 2006 and ongoing is now right there in my face with DARPA and DoD coming out with the same technology and the same interpolation of information that I was creating in Eye of the Remote. I don't see that as a coincidence.
No.
So, and back in the day, if you start talking synthetic telepathy, people would look at you like you were insane. But it's a very now it's
absolutely real. There's lots of documentation online that you can read about it for the Army War College. There's lots of documents that they've put that they're just online. You can read about them. Yeah. And so it makes you question everything. I swing between thinking it's all humans and they're just messing with us, to no, it's aliens and it's humans messing with us, to I'm going to hide behind I'm crazy today, back to is it them, is it us, is it them, is it us? It's both, like
back to something.
It's
again,
both,
that's the whole idea.
Together. They are working together.
Well, there's a lot of the what I call their version of hybrid technology insofar as taking an extraterrestrial signature and then using that signature to create an artificial template which creates an illusion of an extraterrestrial. So in my opinion, I think they have cloned templates which are like, not necessarily implants, but interface programs that literally are extraterrestrial driven, but are not the origins of true extraterrestrial. That's just my own personal assessment.
This is why I think there's some sort of, if you consider the hybrid program that people talk about, I think that's because they're not like Phil Kinsella will say that he postulates this because they haven't been born, they're not in the birth-death cycle. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of wondering if this is the way that they're trying to actually attain some sort of soul.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's really interesting, if they hijack somebody who's a soul, spirit, consciousness, like beings like us, say you're being brain hacked remotely with a signal, and they create an artificial template to interface with your brainwave activity and then use that template to interface back to their AI and then overlay it onto somebody else. They could literally create a kind of like a symbiotic program that would actually be connected to your energetic with another host. And that's what I see. I see a bit of a cloning going on here, although in my opinion it can go way far beyond what we're looking at in this spectrum. So for me, I think extraterrestrials, when I look at them, I think we are the origins of off-world intelligence. We are extensions of that. We are immortal beings, and we take on many forms in other dimensional fields based on our frequency and state of consciousness. That defines the perimeter, and that's with everything we do. So depending on how you're thinking for the day, you're going to create the whole blueprint for that whole day. And we understand mastering consciousness very well, those of us who understand the language, and I think that became a war zone.
Yeah. Yeah, consciousness is definitely a war zone. We can actually be hacked. Our minds can be hacked, our energy fields interfered with, manipulated. I'm
I was going to say,
I know you've been through the war zone. I know you've been.
Yeah, it is.
But you've come out shining. You're such a warrior spirit. You've come out shining bright. So,
it's definitely a lot of untangling.
I was going to say, you mentioned...
does not kill us, makes us very powerful. Just remember, Sasha.
Solaris, you mentioned extraterrestrial, but do you think a lot of it is interdimensional, or do you actually see it as extraterrestrial?
I think a lot of it can be interdimensional, but some is off-world. What I call off-world is not interdimensional, depending. And to me, off-world intelligence would be more evolved and ascended versus the interdimensional, which is more like a wormhole. To me, the interdimensional is something more digital or something more connected to psychotronics, just because of the way they can penetrate the electromagnetic field in different dimensional fields here with technology to overlay and then create their own wormhole signature to create a projection of an image. So I'm looking at, I think a lot of it's interdimensional, but to me, the big guns, so to speak, the big ETs, what you want to call ETs, are off planet.
So how many of these extraterrestrials, races, do you think they may be sort of interfering with us, do you think, or visiting us, or have you any idea?
That's a great question. I don't have a number of ETs, quote-unquote ETs. I know we're all star people. I know we're all star beings, and I look at us as star beings who have entered onto a timeline, have incarnated here. We've come from other origins in the cosmos, other space-time configurations. We have an experience here, and then we go back to our whatever configuration we choose to go back to in the illusion of. That's the way I look at it. I look at us as co-creation and many, many life forms in different species, but I don't try to put too many labels on it because in my opinion, and this is just me, there have been too many people saying this race, that race, this race. I can't confirm those races. I haven't had any interaction with some of those things that they talk about, but I do understand the pure energy, pure light beings and different life forms that in my opinion are connected to our cosmic heritage. So I go by that. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Well, kind of.
Well, you can elaborate.
Whenever I speak to you, you always blow my mind. I never know.
And then I go into other orbits, and then you have to reel me back in, so I apologize.
I'll go away with my head spinning. I know recently you went to a big conference meeting, didn't you? And I mentioned to you about meeting Michael Feely. Did you get to meet him at all?
I'm sorry I didn't get to meet him. It was parts of that were so rushed around. I didn't get a chance to meet him, but I did have a really good time, and the UFO Con in San Francisco was excellent. It was really, really awesome. I did get to do a presentation on Sunday on my book Alien Intelligence, which was well received. So that went very well. I did hear that your friend did an excellent presentation, and I know that they'll be available for viewing later on. So I'm going to take a look at it.
Yeah. I understand he was well received, and I would advise you to get him on your show too.
Yep, absolutely.
I saw him speak last year, and I really enjoyed his talk, actually.
Very interesting,
nice.
Isn't it? It makes you makes you think, much like you do. Only with yours, it just really makes my head spin.
Well, I think a lot of people are speaking a similar language. I think that we're taking it up to a higher frontier. I mean, those of us who have been through certain experiences know how to navigate out of the wormholes, and we're giving more clarity to the quote-unquote UFO experiences or what's out there in the cosmos. And to me, it's a very simple equation. You're dealing with energy and frequency and modulation of waves and signatures and brainwave activity and how we're harnessing this through our own lives and the programming we've been subjected to, whether we've been subjected to it as children, as social engineered, or through a covert induction of some kind or an ET encounter. So it takes on a lot of different levels, but I find it fascinating. I try not to get too wrapped up in the quote-unquote UFO experience itself. To me, we are the anomalies. We are the alien intelligence.
Yeah, I actually think a lot of the time that, I sit here and I'm thinking about everything, and I think, I don't know about aliens, but what are we?
Yeah.
we what the hell are we? We
You're
are such a strange species.
Well, and think about how many lives you've had on and off planet, too. I mean,
you look at where we live, though, where you look at the planet and the way that it's circling around the sun, and it's just crazy.
Well, the fact that you're asking is telling your own awareness that something isn't right here in this configuration.
Yeah.
I totally see that.
Well, you've only got to go to the moon and you'll be an alien. So.
Well, and if you're in another frequency in a state of consciousness, your formula of your body would change. I mean, it depends on what you choose to inhabit, but honestly, we are capable of phase shifting and bilocating. That's a natural gift. Depending on, once again, frequency, our atomic and cellular molecular structure, and how it's harmonized with the dimensional field we're operating in. It's kind of like Star Trek. So those are real abilities. It's just that we've been kind of shut down here, especially with the interference in the programs that are running with covert technologies and frequencies.
Yeah, all the extra frequencies that we've got slicing through us on a daily basis is definitely interrupting.
It's totally toxic.
Any natural sort of frequency or bioelectric field that we'd have, it's all being, bombarded basically. So, and that all feeds back directly into every cell in our body. I mean, I know, people just don't kind of connect to the fact that we are an energetic being as well as this like meat machine.
Exactly, and that's the biggest thing. But for me, I'm more of I'm an energy being, so I need to have my environment harmonized, and when it's not in harmony, I have problems. I think that's they know this with these warfare programs. That's why when they scramble your electromagnetic field or they're doing remote brain hacking, that's a huge intrusion to your own bioelectric field and nervous system, central nervous system. I mean, it's unbelievable and it's amazing that we can endure it. This is what I found out after I got out of that whole wormhole and that whole timeline and all the things I've been through. It's amazing that we can survive those things.
Well, after I was taken by reptilians in 2007, I don't know what they were doing. There was some kind of surgical stuff going on. And, my brain was completely scrambled for a year. Literally couldn't think at all. obviously I think part of it was trauma, but I think it was something that was done on an energetic level to my body. Whatever they'd done to me affected me that badly that it took around about a year to get my brain into any kind of working order. It was really, really bad.
Did you ever measure yourself for implants or anything?
No.
I'm curious. I bet you have a bunch.
Well, I don't want to know.
That's
I've kind of thought about this before, and if I knew that I had anything like that in my body, I might obsess about it, and there's nothing I can do about it, and it would make me think all kinds of strange things that I already think anyway, but with more energy. I sort of gently wonder about certain things, but if I knew, then no, I've got enough to deal with, enough to juggle inside, enough to contain, without knowing anything about anything like that. It just frightens me. It frightens.
No, I don't blame you.
No, it just frightens me what it would do to my psychology and my state of mind more than what it's doing to my body, because I've already had years of thinking or wondering if they can hear my thoughts, if they're, somehow able to observe me all the time. And I think, well, that's kind of, thinking like that's not it's not good for you, so you kind of like try and block it out, but you can't help but wonder these things, like you just feel observed all the time, whether you are or not, I don't know, but you have to get used to the feeling of being observed all the time.
And that's your psychic antenna too. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I suppose not only just sort of watching what you do, but driving you, maybe even making you think and do things.
Well, I've thought that as well.
Right. Well, if they have, remote brain hacking is all about remotely controlling the target of interest. That's where I've been. So I understand how clearly a handler can operate and control and manipulate somebody physically, and even push them with telepathic programs to a point where they fight back or they get compromised. They cave into the program. So insofar as feeling like you're being watched, I don't think that's really paranoia. I think that's psychic radar, knowing that something's up, and maybe you're feeling something watching you. Now, whether that's an extraterrestrial, a spirit, a ghost, or your surveillance companies, your global security agencies, it can be a lot of different things, but that's normal, in my opinion, for a lot of naturally psychic and attuned people with very fine-tuned antennas to pick up on.
And I know for a fact that they want to know what abductees have seen, even though we can't remember, and I don't know if that's part of why our memories are wiped, so that humans can't get their hands on the information or the things that we've been exposed to, that we've seen. They do want to know what's happened to us. They do want to know where we go. They want to know everything about all of it. So that's why that extra interference comes in.
I think you could be right about that. It is kind of a layer of protection to some degree, that they create screens and programs, and it's almost like encryption, so that the right or the wrong people who try to access that particular being will not be able to get the information they want. So it does make a lot of sense to me that they would do something like that for your own protection, perhaps.
That film Loopers, I know that's about, traveling sort of time and space kind of, that sort of the vapors, the chasing the vapors is what I mean. And that's my feeling on that.
Yeah, sounds like your radar's on.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen that one. Is that a Bruce Willis film, or is that something else? No, something else.
No. Samuel L. Jackson's in it, I think.
Right.
There's a lot of good ones out there that hone right in on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I don't know whether I should bring this one up, Solaris. We were talking a bit about Rush and Neil Peart, the drummer who died, what was it, about a month ago, or was it 6 weeks ago?
It's January 7th.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah, it's about that.
A couple months ago.
Now, you had some dealings in that, didn't you? Well, not in his death or anything.
Yeah, I had a lot of
I wonder if you wanted to go into anything and sort of kind of. I'd like to understand a bit about what happened.
Right. Well, I can kind of dive back into 2004. He was the main person that was responsible for what happened to me in 2004 regarding an induction that happened in my residence in Superior, Colorado. And it's a long story, but anybody who follows my work or watches the documentary or reads my book series, Either Remote Black Operations in Areas Beyond 52, will get an idea of what I'm talking about. But in 2004, I had sent a book to Neil Peart which is called Transmutation Through Ascension, one of the first books I've ever written on spirit and consciousness, because one of my kickboxing students had informed me that his pseudo daughter died in a car accident, and then his wife died, and I felt bad, so I sent a book his way. And let me explain why I sent my book initially, because I had correspondence with this person back in the late, I think it was late 80s to 90s. So, I mean, he was back and forth. I was having correspondence with him, and he would send me a postcard. And the reason I got involved with that was because of a quote-unquote drum solo contest, and people used to say I wrote like him, so I sent, this is kind of long-winded, but I sent a copy of my poetry because people said I wrote just like him, and I sent it to him, tongue-in-cheek for the drum solo contest, and he started sending me postcards back. So that's how the correspondence happened, and that's where I felt comfortable enough to send him a copy of my book. Well, after that, after I sent him a copy of my book in 2004, within like a week's time, I had all this stuff happening around my house. I had physical plants in the area. I had my computers were starting to get hacked. My cell phone was getting hacked. People were making phone calls on my phone that I didn't recognize. And then all of a sudden, the interface started. I started getting interface live feed real time with the technological communication system, which is synthetic telepathy. And they announced who they were. And this wasn't like an imposter group playing games. They mentioned their names clearly to me, and they mentioned the name of Michael J. Mossbach, and this is Michael J. Mossbach with Neil. And Michael J. Mossbach, if anybody doesn't know who he is, was the right-hand man and director of surveillance and security for Rush at the time, and also used to do a lot of private work with him. He has an extensive background and connections with high military, DC, and a lot of different areas that you would, with more exotic technology. So that's where his name came through. And I didn't know who he was until I physically met him in 2005, a year later. But it's a long story, but I basically got pulled into their warfare program, their covert technological program, extracted out of my home with the synthetic telepathy live feed real time, traumatized in my home. And within 4 months' time, I was literally out of the house on Maui and literally interfaced 24 hours a day with synthetic telepathy, remote viewing, and psychotronic programming, handled mostly by Neil and a few of the other members, Alex Lyson and Kenny Lee, but with Michael J. Mossbach as one of the primary handlers. So that was going on with me on Maui, and this is why I have there's kind of a case associated with this. I guess you can call it a very, very powerful case that was shoved under the carpet. I had to testify in 2006 against them, which Michael suggested I do to set me up in the courtroom. And it's a long, long story, but that's the whole case behind it. This is kind of wrapping it up quickly. But the idea behind this is that they were the initial perpetrators in the case. And that if it wasn't for him, I would not have been inducted into that covert warfare program with the synthetic telepathy. So that's how that rolled. And that's what happened to me in 2004. And I did measure the signals, and we did get evidence. And so far as we had confirmation of these people, we had confirmation of Mossbach's background. Mossbach met me in person, even confirmed this stuff with me in person. We called it a special hearing. I said, how long is this hearing going to last? He said, well, how long do you want it to last? But a lot of the information that we shared through live feed real-time communication system was connected into the album of Snakes and Arrows, into the Feedback album in 2004, and all the albums that they were creating, plus the R30 tour, which is Contents Under Pressure at the time. It was a book that was literally connected to me interacting with them live feed real time. I know it sounds science fiction and really wild, but it is, and that is a valid case. And what's really interesting is that technology, people always ask me, why would they be involved in that? Well, PERT was involved in it because it's a perfect surveillance system for psychotronics, but also remote viewing and communication live feed real time. It's better than a telephone. It's better than any type of a walkie-talkie. You don't need any of that. You're wired in. Live feed real time is the best communication system. So I think it became a kind of a toy for them on tour, and then eventually got out of control. It certainly got out of control with what they did to me, because I was completely traumatized. I wasn't verbally communicating with my husband at the time. I was that damaged. I was that traumatized. I was not functioning at all. I mean, I was on autopilot, literally remotely controlled by him. And then he showed up in 2005 on Maui. So it's a long story, and there is a documentary, but it's these guys have access to these technologies, is my point. And a lot of these people in the music industry, the entertainment industry, a lot of high-profile people have a lot of money to spend and invest in a lot of different areas, including exotic technology, which connects into synthetic telepathy and some of the psychotronics that I was exposed to. And if you research his work, and I've always mentioned this to people, if you look at his old books and then you look at his old writing, Ghostwriter, Master Writer, that's all about the program. The other information about the lyrics he used to put out back in the day always connected into synthetic telepathy, transhumanism, psychotronics, mind control, covert warfare. It was very smooth, and if you really understood what he was talking about, you'd pick up on it. If you've been through the program, you'll immediately know. But if you didn't, and you weren't accessing the program, you wouldn't know. You just think it's a good song. That's probably long-winded, but I was trying to give you kind of going back on the timeline.
It actually makes me want to dig in some of Rush's music and have a little listen to it, because I've never really listened to a lot of it. So
listen to the Signals album, listen to Grace Under Pressure, 2112. My goodness, I can go on, and I'm not discounting their music abilities insofar as their abilities as musicians. I've always said they were excellent musicians, but what they did was inexcusable. It damaged my whole life. It took my life out and put me in a whole different world of covert warfare where I was subjected to an awful lot of torturous programs, and that was by their doing. His hand, Pert's hand, personally.
Do you know why? Why would he sort of home in on you for that? Do you think? I mean,
I know.
Is it because you offered yourself as a I don't know, as the experiment or something?
Well, I'm certainly not a groupie or a fan, if that's what you're alluding to.
No.
It was more about intellectual. I'm very smart. I'm very intellectual. And back in the day, in 2004, I was really solid. I had a happy marriage. I had a wonderful life, a wonderful stepdaughter. I had my martial arts. I was teaching martial arts. I had great students. I was doing healing work and writing. So I had my perfect life. I mean, I had no interest in anybody's other realities. I think that I made a good candidate, and I've always told people this. I think that the reason that he went after me was because I was pretty much right there energetically on a very high scale and frequency to be more than interactive with the technology. I think I was compatible with their type of program.
They probably saw your intelligence, I should think, and that's probably what I honed in
on.
Well,
I think that's part of it, and also the fact that I talk about the Merkaba, and I don't know how familiar you are with Merkaba vehicles, but the work that I've done in the past is all about spirit ascension work and DNA activation, not the woo-woo stuff you hear nowadays, but the old school, mystery school frequency DNA activation, where you're literally changing light body levels, and your body starts to morph in frequency to such a high degree it starts pulsating with a unified field. And this unified field merges with what we call the full light universe, but it does have a celestial heartbeat and pulse. It's a very unique signature. They hijacked that signal in 2004. That's where I located the signal anomaly implant afterwards when Steve Colburn measured it. So that's one of the things insofar as candidates for this technology. This person is primed for that on a frequency level. And also the fact that I was able to interface live feed real time with the telepathy. I think they were blown away that I was able to communicate so quickly and so fast with him live feed real time. I think that was something appealing, and it was something that they wanted to keep researching and doing the work on with this type of PSYOP, and also the type of remote viewing, because we were doing some really good remote viewing at the time as well, even though I wasn't really understanding a lot of it at the time because I was completely traumatized. It's very interesting. It's a very fascinating program, but at the same time, it's also very abusive. They did try to change my name several times over. They used to call me, I'm Selena Taylor. Your birthday's April 22nd. Now, if you know anything about the history of the band, I didn't know Selena Taylor's birthday. I don't know anything about her. Okay, I only knew that from what what my kickboxing student told me. He said that his quote unquote daughter had died in a car accident back in the day. Well, this is what they were telling me live feed real time, that your name's Selena, your birthday's April 22nd. I said, that's not my birthday. I kept arguing with them. I mean, they were trying to overlay programs onto me at the time. It was disgusting, some of the things they were trying to do. I can get into the PSYOPs, but I don't remember. I don't forget anything. I don't forget what they did, and I documented everything as best I could when it came down to the information and the type of words and things that they were using. I can go on and on. I don't know how long your show is, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, as long as you like.
And it's been 15 years, so it's been a long time. So I've kind of dived back into that filing cabinet, but it is. I'll never forget it because it destroyed my life. And even though I function and I'm semi-positive and I'm out there, no, this isn't the reality I was supposed to have, and I know that. And I was supposed to be in my nice, beautiful home back in Superior, Colorado, right now, and things never changed. They changed so drastically. I mean, that I couldn't get back to the life I had. So
I understand that one. I often wonder. I wonder what I would be like. What would I be doing if I hadn't been crushed by this new reality that just completely disintegrated who I was and what I thought I knew?
I so agree with you on that. Because even though we think we've come out of things, and we are bright and enlightened, and I know you are, and I know that I've come out of a lot of things, I was much more bright and enlightened before they tagged me. I mean, I was off the charts in frequency. I was doing DNA activation on people. I had people that I was working healing work, and I mentioned this before probably on your show, but I was doing healing work on people to a point where if they had AIDS or anything critical, I would put them in remission by working on them just frequency. Yeah. I mean, I was really doing some fabulous work, and then I had a great marriage. I loved my husband dearly. My one soulmate, you only get, in my opinion, there are other soulmates, but he was the man that I knew I was supposed to be with, and that was ripped away. Like, it didn't matter. Like, nothing mattered. The only thing that mattered was me being extracted out of my house and using this technology to do it. So, yeah, I get pissed about it to this day if I start getting fired up about it. But and I testified against them in 2006, and that case was shoved under the carpet. And if you follow the case, and I don't know, people look at the transcripts and they wouldn't understand it. You have to also understand that my lawyer was ex-NSA Signals Intelligence. So he worked for national security. That was what he says. He was ex-signals, and I don't really know if he was ex-signals intelligence or not, in a sense that I don't think he ever retires from those divisions. But that's the man that was shadowing my case that backed them up enough to keep them from doing probably more damage than they could have. So it's a long story. It's kind of creepy, and it's not easy on the ears in a sense of, it's torturous. There's a lot of negative stuff that went on.
Yeah, it sounds it. I mean, I'll have to have a look and put some links on the Paranormal Dimensions page if anyone's interested out there.
I have my documentary DVD.
Yeah, I'll, is there a link on there that is it out on the, or is it a DVD type of thing?
Well, my DVD is on, I think if you go over to KCOR on my hyperspace page, you can find the DVD access there.
Right.
A lot of my books will be available on, that's where I always send everybody because it's easier, and then you can just access it through Amazon or wherever. There's plenty of interviews. There's an initial interview that I put out back in 2006 so that I wouldn't disappear. And that's still around, though. Pert wanted to take that one down. We kept it out there. And, of course, back then you could see how fragile I was and how I was still articulate, but so handled and so controlled. I mean, you have no idea how much I've gotten into my own empowerment over the years. It's a freaking, I don't know, it's amazing to me because I was really being handled, and I was trying so hard to be gracious and kind and loving. And you know what? They don't care. The more loving you are, the more they'll manipulate you. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the way it is. Yeah.
And they go through that weakness because as beings, like as spiritual beings, we're normally very like high frequency, high vibe, nice and loving, and unconditionally loving to people. That's how I normally am. So I guess people, if they're nefarious in some way, they'll take advantage of that. So.
Yeah, that happens to me.
Yeah, I know Sacha's been through the mill as well, haven't you? With the.
Yeah, well, I'm just not going to let them change me. I'm not. I'm not. They've got no control of my emotions, and they mean nothing to me. So their opinions mean nothing to me. I've just transcended that kind of level of feeling their animosity, because you generate it yourself. Your reaction to it is generated within you. And when I realised, why do I even care about what they think? You just it is literally a kind of frequency shift, isn't it?
Yeah, you transmute it alchemically. There's no doubt about it. The one thing I had a hard time shaking off was the synthetic telepathy live feed real time. And that didn't start to break down, and a lot of the things didn't start to cease until maybe 5-6 years ago. But also, Pert was starting to get sick a few years back, too. And I knew that something was wrong because I had so much entanglement programming. And I was working surveillance and security work, and recently doing security work. And I was working, and I'd get home and I'd just think that I was dying. Something's not right. But it wasn't me that I was actually feeling. It was them. It was him. Yeah. And he passed in January, and things changed drastically energetically. I also know that in 2000, just recently, actually, probably about a year ago, there's been some changes with DC as well, and I know they have more than enough information regarding my case and the technology I was interfaced with, which was shoved under the carpet, very, 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 very dark, very deep, to a point where nobody would probably even know what went on back in 2004. But I think there's been some overlays going on now, so things have cleared out quite a bit. But I'm not the same. My life's changed. I mean, I'm different. I'm more. I don't know what I am anymore. I am what I am at this point. That's the
best way to be.
So, exactly it. I just function as positive as I can and do the best I can while I'm here on the timeline, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know what to ask you. Sacha, you got anything?
I know, that was a long-winded piece right there. So
I was just listening and relating to how you're saying that it leaves you, and people don't seem to be able to connect with the fact that it's not just one little incident. It's kind of like a daily tap on the head. So everything, you've got a little dint everywhere from it all, and you have to contain it while dealing with people on the net, and trying to create something, or trying to function in a certain way, or like live your life right, but also not let it all be for nothing. Because it's just been too much. It can't all be for nothing. And I think that there's other people out there who are going through this who won't dare say all the things that they've been through, and probably never tell anybody. But they need to know that, as dark and as weird as it sounds, it does get dark and weird. Oh, it does. And if you do a lot of research on the band and Pert himself, without all the sanitization,
it will come to your eyes very clearly that he's been involved in these projects. And it was sad because when I saw that he had transferred out, I wasn't sad, happy, this, that, or anything. But I noticed how much of a following he had and how high profile he is and how people were glorifying him. And they never knew. To his grave, he took that to his grave. He'll never tell the world what he was really involved in. And I think that's such a disservice. That is such a disservice. And the one thing, Michael's still around, the ex-handler. I don't know what he's doing right now on the timeline. We've got the other two band members. They're kind of hiding out, doing what life goes on for them. They could care less. But the bottom line is I know, and they know, and a few others know in covert intelligence that they're guilty. And that's never going to change, and my life was destroyed and changed forever. And I just leave it at that. And, of course, and let me not forget his wife, Carrie Nutcase Nuttall, who he's married to, was one of the perpetrators as well in that induction in 2004. So she's very, very guilty of that crime. And, of course, she's gotten away with it as well, using her kid as a human shield these days, from what I understand. So, yeah, there's some real, I get angry because justice is never served. And a lot of people, yes, I'm one case, but there are many cases out there, whether it's contactee, MyLabs, targeted individuals, whatever it is, that get pulled into things and get discredited or the case gets shoved under the carpet or this and that, and they never get the voice, they never get the respect, and they never get the people who are the perpetrators prosecuted. And this has been a real problem and a disease on this world for a very long time. And maybe it will change. I don't know. But, I'd like to see it change.
But does something catch up with them on the other side at some point? You never know, do you?
Well, Pert's not here anymore. I think that the universe, I gave it to the universe. I knew I couldn't, I'm not going to sit there and hex and curse and do this. I put the truth out. I put my books out. I put the documentaries out. I did interviews. And I left it at that. And I've always been very strong and adamant about the truth and telling everybody on my witch files and this and that. And when he passed, it wasn't like I was that surprised because I felt like the universe was eventually going to settle the score in a sense that, what goes around comes around, buddy, and the universe came for you. And this is what's very strange about that. When they inducted me in 2004, I had a happy marriage and I had a wonderful stepdaughter that was living with me. And she was the same age that Pert's daughter is now when he died. So once again, what they did to me, what they took from me is now taken from his wife is dealing with the same situation. He's gone. The daughter's there, that kind of thing where I was extracted. I'm telling you, the universe has a way of balancing things out. I really feel like that was some universal intervention on that.
Yeah, sounds rather a lot
and
like
yes,
karma.
Also the idea behind the brain tumors, because if you've been involved with neural interface and synthetic telepathy and psychotronics and electromagnetic weapons, I've had radiation toxicity back years and years and years ago that I had special forces guy tell me what it was. I didn't know what it was, and I had really bad side effects of things that I couldn't define. My doctors couldn't figure it out. They had me on steroids. I was puffing up, and he said, this is what you need to be on. Do this for a week, because he had radiation toxicity, and that cleared it up. So I can tell you that there are things that happen and side effects when you're being involved in tampering with these technologies and interfacing them with the body. The body handles a lot of things. Other times you get brain tumors, you get all kinds of, things can happen health-wise that can be very severe with these technologies and the interface.
Well, I don't know where to go with that now.
I know. You can edit this however you need to.
I don't know if I ever asked you this before, Solaris. Do you have you got any implants that you know of, or you think you may have, or?
Yeah, that's what my DVD documentary was about.
It was.
The signal anomalies. There are anomaly signals that were measured back in 2012. And what's really sad is I wish Steve Colburn had measured these back in 2004 because I was off the charts back then. And even with 2012 measurement, they were pretty strong. So you can see those on the Either Mode of Disclosure and Covert Technology DVD. There's signals that were measured. I also have 45 minutes of raw video footage that nobody's seen, which shows cameras going on and off and things happening that were abnormal or anomalous, so to speak, while we were trying to do measurements. So, yeah, I do have things that are there, and they confirm the tagging that I felt when I was being tagged with the communication system live feed real time. So for me, it was a really good confirmation. When I saw Steve recently, the signals are still there, but they're not anything like they used to be. So that is interesting to me. So things have changed drastically. Although I still have the wiring, so to speak, it's just not the way it was back in 2012, in my opinion anyways, unless it switches on. But we were talking about activation, deactivation through frequency, and a lot of these anomaly signals do that, whether they're physical implants or signal transmissions. You can deactivate or activate through states of consciousness, but also through programs. And I've been through a lot of programs in the past. So, I'm on high alert in my energetic grid right now.
Right.
We'll see what happens.
Do you know where they are? Or do you know where they're located on you? Or...
Yeah, I have some around the crown. I have some in the back. One's near my heart. If you look on the map there on my documentary, you can see that.
Oh, right. Okay. Well,
most of them are around the crown. and around the back of the head.
Because that's quite interesting, isn't it, Sasha? Because that's what Philip and Ronnie say about the back of their ear.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people get those. If you talk to Steve Colburn, I don't know, you're all familiar with him, right? Or no?
Yeah.
Because he actually is pretty good when it comes down to analysis. I mean, he did learn from the best, in my opinion. And you have to also get X-rays. I mean, but what I've noticed is that some of these will show up as a physical implant, and other times they're going to show up as a signal frequency because you're dealing with transmission of signal, which, it's hard to get a physical implant when you're just streaming into somebody's brain. So that's something to look at also. You got to measure the different bands and frequencies. It's like fine-tuning an antenna.
Somebody that I know saw a large kind of pyramid craft in Wales in 2016. She went and got herself a polygraph. She was rejected by a couple of polygraph testers when she said what it was that she wanted testing for. So she didn't tell the third person. She just said that it was really important that she did it to say for her family's sake and for her doctor to know because she'd been ill. And it was the people who were doing the polygraph that said that she had some strange signal coming out of her.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, they're there, and they're very compatible with our electromagnetic field and bioelectrical field, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you're dealing with. But in my opinion, I've always said this technology can be used for positive things, like with Sci-Spy, it can be used good for super soldiers and military personnel and astronauts. I mean, there's so many things you can do with it on a very high frequency level, on a higher state of consciousness. But they've weaponized it. They use it for interrogation, torture, harassment. For me, it was brainwave entrainment. They entrained the hell out of my brain. And I've slowed down over the years of my speech, but I used to talk super fast. And the reason I've always told people that was because I was constantly being inundated with a synthetic telepathy program to a point where I had to back it up. It was taking over my narrative. It was taking over me. So I had no choice but to speed up and push it out and do the best to override and literally take control over my own being. So, it's an interesting program, but man, some of these people really do need to be held accountable that are misusing it. And hopefully that'll happen at some point. I think it's already happening now, quite honestly.
It seems that no matter what they're trying to do to the human psyche, it always fights back and it finds its way back.
Oh, yeah, it does. Well, it's source, higher self, oversoul, superconscious. I always say your spirit, your pure energy, your raw essence. To me, that's a sacred divine energy. It's a sacred temple, and to be violated like that with a directed energy weapon of some kind, or it's literally attacking you from the inside out with an exterior signal it's disgusting. Quite honestly, I can't believe they're doing it, but at the same time, they have access. And I've always been concerned about the lower Earth orbit satellites right now because we have Elon Musk, and although he wants to mask it as Wi-Fi and a lot of other things, remotely brain hacking people is not hard. Influencing the mass collective is not hard, and using radio waves or signals or microwaves is real easy to do. So we do need to monitor this very closely, what's going on.
Do you think that this 5G is going to be a threat then, in that case?
Everybody's saying it is, and honestly, I think it's a scrambler. I think it's a kill in a way because what I see, and I know a lot of people have said this also, it does suck out it seems to me like it's taking away oxygen. In other words, we need certain parameters to be functional here on this world, and it seems to be taking away and weaponizing and amplifying certain things. And in my opinion, it can even amplify some of these viruses we're seeing. I'm not saying that's what's happening with a particular coronavirus, but it's a possibility that these things can be weaponized and amplified more to that type of a frequency. I do know that it sucks out the oxygen and that we need to look at this and how it's taking down the electromagnetic field insofar as it's like constantly being penetrated with something that's wearing you down. All illness starts in the aura, and the aura is the electromagnetic field to some degree. Whether it's through technology that's penetrating your aura or it's with a frequency or a psychic energy, that to me needs to be looked at. And I think that this can be a problem. And I've noticed since they've switched, it seems like they've ramped up transmissions. I'm not saying it's 5G. I've noticed more people getting a little more chaotic. And of course, we're dealing with a crisis in the illusion of right now, but still, and that to me is no accident at all. So.
Yeah, do you think that's a kind of a psyop or this coronavirus as well?
Well, I don't think it's an accident. And it seems to me like it's bioweapon oriented. It does seem to me like it's mutating. It's also, to me, I think that it's there's an agenda behind it, which I don't want to sound too much into that conspiracy. I'm not into conspiracy and illusion, but it's just logic, It's like this is not an accident. There are no accidents here.
No, the thing
is, we're dealing with people.
This is all we're hearing about for the last couple of weeks, isn't it? This coronavirus, and I'm wondering if it's actually more just being spoken about than it is actually the threat. To be honest, because I mean, people.
Well,
die,
that's true too.
Because people die through normal flu.
Right.
If you're that way inclined, if you're weak or whatever, you die from flu anyway. And a lot more
that's a
people
good
die
point you
from
make.
suicides or drinking and drugs and everything else than I mean, I just heard that there's was it 103, I think she was, in the paper. She's actually got over the coronavirus. So
wow, 103?
I think
wow,
she was
that's fabulous.
Yeah, I think I
her.
saw that.
Well, I think that's good that we
Over
need to hear
100.
more about the positives, because right now everything has become more negative.
Yeah.
I know that. And I know I can be kind of negative too in a sense, but I'm kind of a cynic when it comes to analysis because of where I've been. But I do know that they've classified some of the briefings that they're talking about right now in the White House with the coronavirus. So you're not getting the full information. I think it's airborne. Some people say it's not. I'm sorry, but I think it spread way too fast to just be a sneeze here and there and water droplets. I find it to be something else. So to me, we'll see. You know, like I said, we're monitoring. We're in a state of emergency where I am right now, as many other states here in the United States. And with that comes more strange. Okay, so we'll see. I'll keep you posted.
Are they all out buying toilet paper where you are?
Oh gosh, you know what? I'm happy to say that there hasn't been that weird going on where I am, but not to see. You know, it might happen. I don't know. You know, people are acting kind of strange. I know I'm just more on red alert. I'm more on high alert, but that's more like me with my programming. And I just get more like military. I just get more situation awareness. Make sure you have what you need. Sleeping doesn't happen for me when I get like this, when this stuff goes on in atmospheric. It's the atmosphere that's got me on high alert. It's just you know, just paying attention to what they're really doing, because you look behind the scenery. That's one thing going on, but to me, it's always one of these things where it's a sideshow. There's something else happening.
It's all there's a lot of theatrics, isn't there?
Right. Yeah, it's theater too. Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of the chaos that's been actually being caused by the news channels, just constantly talking about it all the time. You know
what? I agree with you. I just want to listen to
panic.
music. Yeah. I know, because everywhere I go, there's that's all it is. But then when I went downtown today, for example, nobody's wearing masks. Nobody's really concerned. I mean, I guess people are making sure their hands are clean, but nobody's in that mode of panic. Not yet, anyway. So
the Awakening conference cancelled because of the coronavirus.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. I'm surprised they're not going to cancel the was it Contact in the Desert?
Well,
I don't know.
Give it
if they are
time.
or not,
They've got a little bit of time yet, but it could happen, couldn't it? Maybe, I don't know.
Right. I'm sure they'll keep an eye on it, but it is something to look at down the road.
But I always think that with things like that, there's so much money involved in some of these conferences, aren't there? You know. Yeah,
but I know the one that Lorian creates. She didn't make a lot of money on that one, but to me, it was a great conference. It was genuine, not too big, not too small. You know, a lot of good people there, a lot of nice people that were there, and that's what I look at.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that Contact in the Desert, I think there's quite a lot of money involved in that one.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, that's going to be a loss, and especially if they have to cancel, I don't think they get their money back.
Yeah, because they draw the big names, and also the tickets are not cheap anyway to go, are they?
Right. Well, I noticed that the big names are a lot of people that literally don't have much to say about a lot of things, and a lot of them have hijacked a lot of data and run with it. But that is what it is, and that's why I talk about the disinformation in the UFO community. They don't have the raw experience. Sometimes they're just taking it from other people. My work's based on my own personal experience and decoding of information and technology, and that's where I leave it. It's not about other people's personal experience. It's mine. But these people, a lot of these talking heads out there, they're just rambling on about things that are other people's work or something they've heard on the internet. They scour the internet for information. It sounds good. It sounds like it might be trendy, and they'll make some money. And all of a sudden they're out there speaking, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to pick up information now, isn't it, off the internet?
Oh, it's like, anybody and their mother can get up there now and ramble on about something they've seen or face. Right.
Yeah.
And especially because those of us who came out, it wasn't easy to come out and talk about this stuff. Back in 2004, when I was inducted, 2006, I put the video out, but when I had to testify in the courtroom, I was terrified.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't something you get happy about, that you're all excited about doing. My God, I just wanted to have a normal life, but I was so tortured with the program, I couldn't have one.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
well,
it's interesting.
It certainly sounds like
in 2005, when I started talking about what we'd seen in Wales, when we'd seen the UFOs, it was because I couldn't contain it anymore. It hollowed me out. It's like half of the time I think, I wish I'd never said anything, because it's just so asinine is the community.
Right.
Not all of it, obviously, but it's hard work. But then I just think, well, that's ridiculous, because there was no way you could contain all this, with absolutely no outlet whatsoever.
But what's interesting is that we all get out here, we start communicating, and through the internet, I must say it's a positive on that level, we've met each other. And to me, that has been a blessing on so many different levels to communicate this information. We share bits and pieces here and there. We put puzzles together. And I think that's the biggest thing. You know, I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm just decoded my part of information where I know I've been through with the technology. But I think everybody has something to bring to the plate who's been through something legitimate or has a legitimate sighting or even the background in their own intellectual state of mind that they can help. So I think that's the blessing part. But yeah, I applaud you for coming out because it's not easy. It's not at all.
Likewise. Yeah. No. It's exhausting.
Yeah, I'm like right now, my prime is gone. They hit me when I was 40 years old, which was, you know, I looked a lot younger at the time. So they took all that away through the technology. So, you know, I'm old now. I'm an old dinosaur. So I'm like, well, he's dead. And now it's like, well, no, life goes on, you know.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Sorry. It's just...
None of us are old. We're all creeping along all right. Don't worry about
that. Well, on this configuration, this space-time configuration, right? But you realize that they take so much of your life away when you get sucked into those things, you know.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, I didn't work for them. I could have worked for them. Mossbach invited me out to California in 2006 before I testified. Yeah. He said, come to L.A. I think I would have been recruited had I gone. I didn't go.
So what?
That's when you came out.
So what stopped you? Was it just your own, how you felt about it, or?
You know, I don't think I could feel. I think I was so traumatized and so on autopilot and so digitized so fast. You know, when you're like on an alternate reality so quickly that you just don't think about it. You're like, oh yeah, I just heard him, but it didn't register. And that's what it was about. It was just about getting home. And to me, home was Colorado.
Yeah.
That's where I had done my work. That's where I was married. That's where I felt safe. At the time, I don't feel safe anymore, but I used to. This was home. And him, you know, he's nebulous. Although I trusted him, and I shouldn't have. I should have never trusted him because he stabbed me in the back in the courtroom. So he's hiding out there in California, and he's got a serious background. I mean, people don't realize he's very close, but he's got some background in this warfare program that people wouldn't believe.
Really?
Very interesting. Yes. They call it threat assessment, you know, and I don't want to get too much into this, but I know we're probably running out of time. But the technology that they use on me, say for interrogation, you can use this. This is just like the new Minority Report. You're using a signal interface to communicate with a target of interest with synthetic telepathy, right? Live feed real time with a handler, and they're constantly interrogating you nonstop till you either surrender and tell them what they want to hear, which may not even be the truth, but they're what they want to hear, or you tell them to F off. Now, for me, I was like not putting up with their crap because I knew they were live feed real time. And the more I resisted, the more they would torture with the signal and use a lot of scalar assaults and a lot of other things. So, and then they call you a threat assessment if you don't comply with the program. Wow. That's their version of covert threat assessment.
It sounds a scary world out there. It really does.
Well, that's the dark side of what's going on. And I think, quite honestly, because beings like myself have been out there exposing it, that we're exposing it to such a degree that they're not going to be able to get away with this too much anymore. And if they try, it's going to be, first of all, a war crime on so many different levels. You just don't do that to people. You don't compromise their brains like that. You don't torture people's brains and cause aneurysms or cancers or God only knows what else. It's scary when they start getting in your head with a signal.
Yeah. Do you think the presidents, whoever they may be at the time, know what's going on, or is that something that's way above them?
No, I was well aware that at the time it was President Bush who was involved, and Cheney. Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think they gave the green light, over there in the White House in 2004, because I remember very clearly when I was working on Maui, and this is what's so funny, and I touched on this in my book, but I mean, I was hired to do surveillance work and security work on Maui. I don't have a background in that. Mossbach does. That's his. It's like I was basically just like the little, trainee and just going into that mode. But I had the White House contacting my employer, and I had a lot of other things. I had people showing up in a white van. I documented that were talking to me and connected to DC and a lot of other things. So we had some stuff going on connected to them. But I knew it was Bush, that administration that was involved in it. And also, if you look at George Bush, it's interesting because I swear he's been interconnected with the technology. I see it in his eyes in 2004. I see it in the way he was responding. I really believe he was interfaced with technology, very similar to where I've been. And then Cheney, of course, he's the Tin Man. You got to be careful with him. He's all involved in synthetic telepathy. I don't know if people know this or not, but Cheney was involved in doing some nefarious work with prisons and using electronic telepathy to re-entrain, re-educate is what they call it, people in that whole area, and also doing experimentation on prisoners. So there you go.
No, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know Bush's father was part of the CIA, wasn't he, years ago?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's Mind Control 101. Project Paperclip is nothing compared to what they're capable of, and it's all psychological operations now. It doesn't even have to be, you don't have to be on scopolamine anymore. You could be extracted out of your house with a signal. And a lot of people who hear voices and sleepwalk, I really worry about people who are sleepwalking. And I've always said, if you're a sleepwalker, be careful because you can get remotely controlled and hijacked, and be careful what is making you sleepwalk. Is it something intercepting you? Is it a spirit, a ghost? Is it something more anomalous, connected to maybe a covert signal program?
Yeah. So that's a warning to everyone listening out there. If you're getting voices in your head, think about what it might be.
Yeah, and don't necessarily listen to them. There are a lot of people out there who listen to my guides say this and my guides say that. You better be damn sure you know who your guides are. I'm sorry. Because that's where the talking voice, whatever it is, it needs to identify itself. And for me, I think the only blessing I've ever had with this program was that I knew who I was dealing with, and they showed up. And that was a confirmation on a lot of different levels. And they went to very, very hard, high extremes, so to speak, to push everything under the carpet, to make sure everything was secured so that this stuff didn't get out of control and the information was sanitized. So.
Well, I think on that note, Sacha, have you got anything final to say? Blimey.
No, just, it is a very nefarious world. And the rabbit hole goes deep with this one.
Yeah, it does.
So it makes me shake. It makes me shake. After I was saying a few things earlier, I was like trembling.
And I didn't want to bring up anything negative here. You did ask, and so of course I'm going to tell you.
No, like you say, I did ask. So
yeah. No,
because it's not comfortable to hear. I understand that, and I'm sorry that it's not comfortable. But let me tell you this: I hope that none of them, your listeners or anybody else, gets pulled into a program like I've been through. Yeah. It's horrible. Well, I made the best of it, but it's not pretty.
It's certainly a big warning out there to anyone that may even be involved in something like that now. Listening, maybe hearing this, give it some second thoughts, maybe.
Well, there are a lot of people that do come up. I know that when I did my presentation, quite a few people came up to me who had been through something, not necessarily similar, but something where they've been targeted to some degree, and also have heard and experienced something very similar on a different scale.
Well,
it happens.
Well, ladies, I think that's probably about it then. And it's been fantastic, Solaris. You've made my head spin again. I've got to go to bed now, and I probably won't sleep.
Well, thank you for having me on, both of you are such wonderful people.
As I say,
I think I'm talking to you again.
As I say,
and Sacha, come back on my show Hyperspace anytime.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I'll put some links on the page again for anyone that's. I'll find as much information as I can on you, Solaris. I've got to put your web link on it and everything. And thank you, Sacha, for helping out today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for asking.
It's been lovely having you both on, and it's been fun and very interesting and mind blowing again, I'm afraid.
In a good way.
You'll be all right, David.
You will.
Anyone out there, I hope you've all enjoyed listening to this, and good night to Sacha and good night to Solaris. And you've been listening to Paranormal UK Radio Network and Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young, and good night to everybody, and tune in again next week. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Paranormal Dimensions is as bright and powerful as our celestial star, the sun. And although it's expending thousands of pounds of energy every minute of the day, have no fear. There's plenty left.
Mm-hmm.